it has been going on, this slavery, forever. For instance, in the United States right now, more human slavery than any other time in history. Who in their right mind would allow unaccompanied children, minors, by the hundreds of thousands to come across and disappear into the interior of the United States, and then put out two statements during the course of the Biden-Harris administration that, well, we lost track of them. The good news is I am very hopeful. I know Tom Homan. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of Tom Homan. Big tech must be held accountable for the dangerous algorithms, which we have proof, beyond proof. These criminal elements, Trendy Aragua, working along with MS-13, which has been a gang that's been around the United States for about 15 years now. They are in all 50 states. Not only are they bringing in the drugs, they've been bringing in weapons. They are getting our American kids to deal their dirty drugs, because kids, I'll pay you $500 in your middle school. Kids are doing it for money. I'll have you traffic your peers. Your daughter may come home and sleep in her own bed at night, but during the day after school, she's being trafficked. I am told by law enforcement in New York City, the demand is for 0 to 2 years old. This is a war going on right in our own country, and we really have to get the public on board. It's like everybody, I feel like, Scott, we live in a new country, and I really believe this, and we have to all do something. Now, maybe they can't do what you're doing, doing shows, or what I'm doing in Washington, but you know what? They can share this discussion.
Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty with Scott Tregurtha, where we help critical thinkers by giving you the most true and accurate information we can find, which they should be giving you on mainstream media, but are not. So you can decide for yourself and take control of your liberty, your freedom, and your future. And now, here is Scott Tregurtha.
Hello, everybody. As you all know, we have a tremendous border problem in this country. Well, today's guest is a genuine warrior who is attacking a border-related problem, which is also a problem that hasn't been getting anywhere near as much attention as it should. And though it may have increased during our border crisis, it has been going on in this country well before this border crisis and around the world, practically since the beginning of time. And that is the problem of human trafficking, or better put, slavery and sexual exploitation. Please welcome today's guest, Lynn Shaw, founder and president of Lynn's Warriors, to enlighten us on this problem and what she and her organization are doing about it. Hi, Lynn. Welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty.
Thank you, Scott. It is great to see you and be with you today. We have a lot to get to, so let's get to it.
Yes, ma'am. So, first of all, I just wanted to know, could you give just a little bit of background on what Lynn's Warriors is and like when you started it and what brought you to where you are today?
It actually is a very interesting story, Scott. My whole background is in entertainment. I started out of college in the music business, and fast forward, Broadway producing, film scores, working on those, TV shows, all of that stuff. I was working with, here's how Lynn's Warriors happened about 5.5 years ago. I was working with a client, very well known, who was writing a book about domestic violence. And I was guiding her through the process of writing and working with the publisher and just really working hand in hand with her to get the book to the publishing point. In doing all that research, Scott, it intersected the domestic violence with human trafficking. And I became crazy, Scott. I'm like, wow, I thought this really was in other places, Thailand, Philippines, not here in the United States. And I said, I have to do something about this. I cannot stand by and not do anything. I like to say, Scott, it chose me. This human trafficking, I did not choose it because I could never imagine I'd be here. So what I did is I formed a nonprofit during that COVID period where, IRS wasn't working or anything. So it took a long time to get everything officially in place. And I work on legislation. I work with victims, survivors, and I want everybody. This is the number one crime in America. At the Warriors, we focus on America. Of course, it's a global, right, problem, epidemic, but right here in our own backyards. And I go full steam. I am passionate about it. Every single person needs to know that this trafficking, this slavery, Scott, it's slavery. That is a better word to describe this. Happening in every town, city, and rural area across America and escalating as you and me sit here and talk about it.
Wow. So, yeah, one of my questions was going to be, how long has this really been going on? Because me and a lot of people only became aware of it since the border crisis, right? And sounds like it's been going on a lot longer than that.
Well, human slavery, because I'm rebranding the word, Scott, trafficking. I never liked the word, but that, of course, is the word we use, human trafficking. I like slavery because it's much more descriptive. You know, we have to change the words around all of these things so people, the public, can really understand. Like you just pointed out, you really weren't aware of it until the border, as most people. It has been going on, this slavery, forever. For instance, in the United States right now, more human slavery than any other time in history. So the border brought it forward. If there's anything good to come out of that, and I hate to even use the word good,
right,
is that more of the public is understanding. And I have to say, for a long time, the Warriors, I would talk about it, and I was told, don't talk about it. I'm talking a couple of years ago. Don't talk about Trendy Aragua. Don't talk about their infiltrating middle and high schools across the United States to get our American kids to deal their drugs, to traffic their peers. And all of a sudden it became, I want to say a few months ago, okay to really start talking about it. And people seem to be shocked. It's been there the whole time. The extent of it, though, we can get into that because this is like nothing. I couldn't write this as a horror movie, what is going on right now and being allowed to go on. And certainly during the Biden-Harris administration, what has been allowed, perpetrated on our country.
Right. And yeah, and to me, it wasn't just allowed to happen; it was intentionally orchestrated. And that's maybe another topic, but I think the whole thing's very intentional. A lot of money to be made here, so on, right? So go ahead.
No, there's so many things. You know, I like to think of this as a big wheel with a lot of spokes. And every spoke is something different. It makes the wheel go around. I don't even know, Scott, I do a lot of work in Washington. And also I'm in New York City, so I do work in my home state, New York, up in Albany, the state capital. I don't know if they're smart enough, Scott, to say they did it intentionally. I think they just said, open it up, let's cause chaos, let's just wreak havoc on the country. Seriously, I don't think this administration, they even thought that far. I don't want to give them that much credit. I think they just said, open it up and cause chaos. Now, with that being said, wherever there's chaos, these predators, these criminals are smarter than you, me, law enforcement, and always 10 steps ahead. So borders overrun? Well, look, we know about so many ways to go here. Trafficking. Who in their right mind would allow unaccompanied children, minors, by the hundreds of thousands to come across and disappear into the interior of the United States and then put out two statements during the course of the Biden-Harris administration that, well, you know, we lost track of them. Unacceptable. Right. Unacceptable. Scott, I could go on and on about this. The good news is I am very hopeful. I know Tom Homan. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of Tom Homan. He is going to clean this up and get a handle on things. But that being said, we have 10 million plus, right, illegal aliens in this country. That is going to be tough to really dig out. But we're going to start with the criminals. We're going to start with those criminals, those horrible, awful criminals, right? And we're going to get rid of them first. And I have all faith in Tom Homan. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith in him too. I just heard him interviewed on Tucker Carlson earlier today. And as you know, I interviewed his right-hand man, Mark Hall, a couple weeks ago. His interview is going to air by the end of the week. Yeah, I have a lot of faith. I mean, November 5th, when I woke up on November 6th, it was like a new era to me. Things have been just felt better. And I know with Trump, and then he's got this great team surrounding him, and Tom Homan is one of them. And he's just awesome. What his attitude is what we've been needing this whole time. And he feels the same way I have, and many of us, probably you too. You know, I've been angry every day since the Biden administration has started. And but yeah, I have lots of faith now. I think things are going to get much better. And it looks like, and you're going to be a big part of it, of course, at least on this aspect of things.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us about what you're intending here? I know this past week you were in Washington doing some things to get some things passed regarding children during this lame duck administration. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I want to make sure the listeners understand what lame duck means, because I have them ask me every day, like I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay.
Of course, Scott, of course, you can look up anything online, right? We have all this information available, but people will say, I don't know what it means. It just means the period between the old administration and the new administration. We have to remember, even though we can't find them anywhere, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they don't seem to be around anywhere, even though they're still in power. And I put that in kind of air quotes.
Right.
Don't you feel, Scott, like President Trump's already president?
Absolutely.
I feel like and that's the way it should be after the last 4 years we've endured. But what happens is you put this final push into legislation to get it passed, because we have until early January to get new laws passed. I'm finding it incredible. It's a very sad day today, Scott, and I'll tell you why. We have worked on, and collectively, this is bipartisan. Anything we talk about with trafficking, slavery, children, right, is bipartisan, belongs to no political party, right? It's not right, it's not left. Human rights abuses. We have worked, Scott, on something called KOSA, Kids Online Safety Act, for over 3 years now, sponsored by Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican from Tennessee, and also Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut. And we have come together to craft a law to keep kids safe online. Now, I don't want to bore everybody. The bottom line is even Elon Musk stepped in last week to help craft, retool the language. We wanted to push this through. It has gone through the House. It just needs to be put on the schedule for a final vote. And you know what? It does not steal. If you look up anything about Kids Online Safety Act in the media, you will most likely find a lot of negative publicity, PR, lots of things that are not true, outright lies. It simply states that big tech must be held accountable for the dangerous algorithms, which we have proof, beyond proof, so many studies that the algorithms are fed to kids, whether it is towards sextortion or eating disorders or self-harm, that they bear the burden, big tech, not the parent or not the child, to take down content, right? And you know what? Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who I've seen him frequently with President Trump, refuses. It was just announced he will not bring this to a vote this session. And what that means is that we start from ground zero again with the new Congress. And it is absolutely unacceptable. This is groundbreaking legislation. It steals nobody's privacy. It does not open a door to stealing other things from Americans. This little bit of legislation, I'm really shocked because Elon Musk got involved. His head of security at X, Linda Yaccarino, got involved last week. And that Speaker Johnson couldn't do this one thing? I don't know what that's all about. So we work on a lot of legislation. And with that, last week was hardcore, Scott. Hundreds of people poured into Washington. We had parents whose children have been harmed or committed suicide from these dangerous algorithms. And again, we have proof. We have lawsuits. We have all these things. And we have both sides of the aisle coming together. We will not tolerate this. We had a big PR press. And you know what? It's just shocking that this one little thing saying, you know what, big tech, we know you rule the roost kind of around here in America. You've got lobbyists making tons of money. I go to Washington, nobody pays me. I'm not a, I don't go on, I go on my own dime. And you know what? It is just shocking that they're able to get away with this. And even people on the left, I'll use that for shorthand, are in shock that this is happening, as well as people on the right. We have to come together for the safety of our kids. We know the internet is a runaway train. How do we preserve privacy, right? But how do we keep kids safe as well? It's really a slippery slope. And with AI here, not fully unleashed yet, who knows where this will go?
Yeah, right. And plus, we don't want to have censorship, but then again, we also don't want we don't want to destroy our kids either. So yeah, big tech has to take the social media companies have to take some responsibility here. And I'm not really surprised. Well, on one hand, I'm not really surprised that they won't entertain Johnson won't entertain your the bill you're putting forth here. But
I'm surprised, Scott. I'm just jumping in. I'm surprised because I saw him at the RNC. I see him at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump. I see him in pictures with Elon Musk, who's pushing for this as well. Frankly, I'm really surprised. And just getting back to the privacy aspect, you see the internet was really born in 1996, almost 30 years ago.
right.
And at that time, there was something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And that meant that any of these platforms act as a newsstand or a billboard. They cannot be held responsible for third-party content. I don't think in 1996 anybody thought all of this predation and horrible things would happen. But what do you say, Scott, when we say we don't want censorship? We don't want censorship. But I can go on every single platform, from X to Snap to Instagram to Facebook, and I can find child sex videos,
Right.
CSAM, child sexual abuse material. Where's the censorship to protect children?
Exactly.
So we have to either sunset this Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. I mean, it's ridiculous, 30 years ago almost, or we have to amend it. We have to do something, and that is where a lot of the most of the problem is. They fall back, and rightfully so. They have the law on their side. We're just a billboard. We don't have to do anything.
Right. But they do things that we don't like. They censor the wrong things as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Like your political viewpoint if they don't like it, that kind of thing. But yes, they'll let that stuff slide that you were just talking about there. And when I say I wasn't surprised at Johnson, it's just that to me, he's kind of a wimp, and he has let a lot of things slide and has shied away from things. Like he just tried to get this omnibus thing put through, right?
Horrible.
But you know what? It was really encouraging how Trump and Musk jumped in and changed everybody's mind. So I'm very encouraged by that. We've got some people here, Trump's got some strength around him here. He can get things done this way. I was very happy about that. But by the same token, I think they can help you. I know you had a problem this time. I think you're going to get it through sooner or later.
I think we will. In 2025, I think it'll go through. I really do.
Right. I mean, we hate to wait, but in this day and age, it's like it's better than nothing, right? And in the long run, it'll really be good. And the other thing is, I just heard I think it was Tom Homan saying today that they were talking about Congress, and it was. Oh, you know who said it? It was Tucker Carlson said it. He says the unfortunate part about Congress is they only respond to pain. In other words, they've got to be threatened with some sort of pain to make them move in a given direction to do something. Like it's penalty and reward. That's what they operate on. It's not necessarily good versus evil. So there are individuals in there that do. You've got some real good ones, but as a general crowd, they need to be threatened. In other words, with no votes or getting voted out of office, getting primaried, that kind of thing. But do you have an ear at all to Trump and Musk and those people?
Yes, I do. I'll leave it at that. Yes, I do.
Good. Well,
I'll leave it at that. Yes,
Yeah.
because I'll tell you why. Let me go back on something I learned, Scott. Before I became Lynn's Warriors in 2019, at the beginning of when I couldn't believe this trafficking and people in America, parents selling their kids in New York City and Washington. And I held a day and I didn't know, I'm not kidding. I really was so naive, but I did a day on Capitol Hill. And I'm telling you, it was only 2019, but I did not really know what I was doing. But I have relationships and I did this complete day. People flew in from all over the country. They have groups, they work in human trafficking, they're legislators. We had 6 members of Congress show up, bipartisan, which I was told it was standing room only. We shut it down after 6.5 hours. And all I did was like announce people and what they're doing. Because I really thought with this slavery, Scott, people would all understand the one issue, right? And come together and collaborate. And we're not going to allow it. So that was an amazing event at the Capitol. And that kind of kicked off everything. And I'll do another day in Congress like that when President Trump is in.
Sure.
But I want to be very careful. I'm seeing now, let's see, for lack of a better couple of words, President Trump and Elon Musk, they're like the cool kids now, right?
Yep.
I think because I'm seeing Mark Zuckerberg running down to Mar-a-Lago. I'm seeing all these people in tech going there. I hope he and others remember how they treated him, what they did to this country, and are always aware. These people are not our friends. This is my opinion. And we have to always be looking over our shoulders. Of course, President Trump will be in power now. They see Elon with all this money. They are flocking there. I'm also seeing what I am afraid of, and I'm going to keep an eye on this and make sure it doesn't happen, is groups that also are in the child safety area, okay? They would be considered left groups. They're affiliated with the media, perhaps. All of a sudden, they're worming their way in to the new administration. These are people who, for instance, I don't know, I have a flag in my background, so they wouldn't talk to me.
Really?
So I want to make sure people have the facts in the new administration, and we cannot let our guard down at all. We really do have to. I'm the ultimate collaborator, like cheerleader. But I'm telling you, this has been weaponized, this whole trafficking situation, child safety. And now it's kind of the cool topic to get on board with. And a lot of people are making a lot of money off of this. We're a nonprofit, Lynn's Warriors. Our monies go to survivors, education. We've done 8 drives of toys, clothes since Thanksgiving with families, vulnerable families. The true spirit of what this means. And I'm seeing things I don't like. So I'm going to make sure everybody knows about it. I bring it to their attention because maybe they're so busy doing everything else, it might kind of slip to the side or something like that. But I will be in there. You can be sure I'll be spending a lot more time in Washington.
Very good. And, I know what you mean about it's becoming a popular topic, and even some bad guys are wheedling their way in there. We always have to watch out for them. They get in there, something can start out as good, and then they get in there and twist it around for their own purposes, and then all of a sudden they're using it, Yeah. Kind of like they did to the Democratic Party. I mean, they get into anything, and then that everybody's going after that's all popular, and then they twist it around and they use it for harm. And I'm very happy to hear you notice that, and you're going to be aware of it. And I hope you stomp these guys out as they rear their heads. Yeah,
I'm stomping, Scott, because I do private donations, so I'm not taking grants, I'm not taking government money, which allows me to be truthful, facts. I notice a lot of these groups, right and left, they take government money, grants, so they kind of toe the line. They only go so far in what they're doing. They don't really speak out about the reality of what this is. And I want to, before I forget, go back to Congress. Something I learned. Both sides do this. They only go so far, Scott.
Right.
I've seen this over. Yes, there are a couple of individuals that are outstanding, right? But their whole goal, in my opinion, is they'll take it so far because when they're done there, they want to be on a big tech board or they want to be on a bank board.
Yep.
So they're not, you can't, big tech rules everything. So, when they have lobbyists getting paid, I'm hearing upwards, $2,500 an hour. And literally one time when I was in Congress, because, you're walking through the halls, you might see somebody and I was grabbing a congressperson to say hello, introduce myself. One of them came up and literally knocked me off of my high heels. I kid you not, to elbow his way in to talk to this congressperson. So they're ruthless. So we have to really, I can't stress enough, be aware of what this entire country has been through in the last 4 years. We have a lot of cleaning up to do. Talk is cheap. This is not going to be easy. And I guarantee you, and I know, Scott, I'm jumping all over the place, you are going to see, because people on the left right now are being very quiet, in my opinion. Very quiet, okay? You will start seeing with Tom Homan, you will see babies being ripped from mothers' arms. Like, these are the visuals, the media.
Yep.
But the media is also running scared now, too. So maybe not, but I think those are the visuals you'll be seeing. As opposed to who in their right mind would want these Venezuelan Trendiaragua threatening and working with Mexican cartels to bring in fentanyl to poison. You do know that's an American crisis. Nobody talks about fentanyl.
Right.
We have 300 Americans a day dying from that, all coming through the open borders. Like, why aren't people in the streets protesting this? Americans, they're being too lazy, Scott. We really need to speak up and speak out because we have facts and truths on our side. But it's horrific.
Yeah, it is horrific. And can you tell me a little bit more in depth about these? You're saying there's 500,000 of these children are missing?
Yes.
Because I'm hearing figures like 300,000, 500,000.
Okay.
And so it's like 500,000 is the closest figure we can. That's as exact as you can get right now.
You know what? It could be 1 million.
Right.
Anytime we deal with any of this, with the border, okay, it's very murky. I was always told by my sources that it's in excess of 500,000 that we know about. If that's what we know about, it really could be 1 million. We don't know, right? However, the media constantly put out, there was a report a year ago, April, and it was 85,000. And Biden even said at one point, we've misplaced 85,000 of these unaccompanied minors. That was one report. Fast forward, then it was 320,000. Okay, if you add those together now, we have over 400,000. Now they're finally saying it's over 500,000. But I have always said it's over 500,000 because that's what I was hearing from my boots on the ground. Homeland Security, also Border Patrol that works, on the border. I think they know best. But the media was never telling the full story. And you know what, Scott? I think it's so dark and ugly, like all of this. And if it's not in your face, like I'm in the middle of New York City. So I have a family hotel around the corner from me. So it's in my face. I see it every day, right? I see women sitting on the sidewalk. I see kids selling trinkets and water bottles. I see these crazy people on mopeds delivering food for all these unaccompanied, whatever they are, illegal aliens, because that's what I call them. It's in my face. If it's not in your face, I think you tune it out, right? If you don't see it in the middle of, I don't know, I'm just making something up, Ohio, because you live in a rural area, you're not going to focus on this. You're not going to think about this. But here's what I want everybody to know. These criminal elements, Trendiaragua, working along with MS-13, which has been a gang that's been around the United States for about 15 years now, they are in all 50 states. Not only are they bringing in the drugs, they've been bringing in weapons. Nobody's talking about that. They were stockpiling weapons along the Texas border. What are they going to do with all I'm talking heavy artillery. What are they going to do with all those weapons? And who, Scott's even talking about that, right? But not only that, they are getting our American kids to deal their dirty drugs because kids, I'll pay you $500 in your middle school. Kids are doing it for money. I'll have you traffic your peers. Your daughter may come home and sleep in her own bed at night, But during the day after school, she's being trafficked. It is a very complex issue that the American public must not tune out because it's so dark and ugly. They just don't want to hear about it. You must, because we have just last year 36 million reports of online enticement. And this is just one to the cyber tip line. 36 million. And the year before it was 32 million. And most of these things don't go report. Nobody reports them. Parents would rather forget about it. Kids aren't going to report it. It is really an American crisis, and it's got to stop. Because just think about this. These are our future adults, our future leaders. What is our future going to be like if this is all around our children? I don't know.
Yeah, we can't have it in our future. This has to be seen through full circle. It really does. And I'm glad we have the administration to do it, but it's not going to just happen. Right. Even with this administration, they've got a million things to handle. So voices like yours and those of us you can rally up and to get us to speak out is going to be a big help. And I know you're probably going to stick with this till the end, till it's totally resolved. And I'm not so naive to think it's ever going to be totally resolved, but I am going to be optimistic. I think we can get there eventually. And it's got to be put in everybody's faces. And I think if you keep doing what you're doing and others are joining in, and there are others probably operating independently of you on the same thing, probably not many, but I think it's going to be exposed more and more if everybody does their part. And I think it's going to be looked back upon like we look back on the Holocaust. And we're going to be sitting there in a classroom. Kids are going to be sitting there in a classroom like I did when I learned about the Holocaust in third grade, going, how did anybody get a whole country to go along with murdering all these Jews? And I think it's going to be the same thing. How did anybody make it okay to let all these people pour into our country and let all this happen to children? And let all this right under our noses. How did that happen? And I think we're learning it, but it's like you say, right now, we're barely aware that it is happening.
Well, but that's just it. You even said, until this border situation, you weren't really aware. I mean, it's been happening forever, Scott. And the thing is, let's be realistic, we're not stopping human trafficking. We're just not. But what we can do, and we know it's bad, right? So I'm a little bit tired of, I go do these Senate roundtables in Washington, and it's about 30 people, and it's always the same thing. It's bad. We have to stop it. And I'm always like, with all due respect, we know this already. How are we stopping it? Where's the education in every school? Where's the intervention? Where are the resources? There are some great groups. It's all volunteer based. They don't have the money. And furthermore, something we should keep in mind, you know what? What do we do with victims that come out or we find or we save? Well, I don't like the word save because it's an ongoing trauma, but we don't have places to put them. You have to remember it's all based on vulnerabilities, right? This trafficking. And if you have, let me just give you an example. If you have a child, I'm not talking about the border now, I'm just talking about an American 14-year-old girl. And bear in mind, the ages are getting younger and younger. We used to say, 14, 15. Now we're saying 10, 11, 12.
Right.
It's getting younger and younger. I will give you a sobering, shocking fact. Scott, I'm glad you're sitting down. I don't know if you want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you. I am told by law enforcement in New York City the demand is for 0 to 2 years old.
Wow.
So just leave that.
Who the hell wants that?
Well, apparently a lot of people. And what's happening is, there's so much to talk about, Scott. It's becoming like normalized. We're being habituated. We're hearing so much about it now. But getting back to Washington, we need to have clear-cut plans. And this is my goal. Yes, we know it's bad. Yes, we know it's happening. Yes, we know we're not stopping it. We got to get in there. We need the resources. And I want to say to you, I was in the White House with President Trump when he was making headway. His daughter Ivanka was put in charge of human trafficking, right, in his last administration. Mm-hmm. And headway was being made, but he needed the next term to finish things he was doing, and he didn't get that. So I'm very hopeful this time that he has been there, he has learned, he knows what's going on, he's got strong people around him. This will be continued. And we've got world wars going on, so I don't want this to fall by the wayside, because this is a war going on right in our own country. And we really have to get the public on board. It's like everybody, I feel like, Scott, we live in a new country, and I really believe this, and we have to all do something. Now, maybe they can't do what you're doing, doing shows, or what I'm doing in Washington, but you know what? They can share this discussion.
That's right.
On their platforms and leverage the internet for good. They can find out, like locally, maybe there's an organization in their area where they can volunteer, or people don't like this, so maybe they want to give $5 or $10. Every little bit helps, and I believe everybody has to do something, because I'll tell you what, people want to know about this if it starts to affect them directly, their child, their grandchild, a family member, after the fact. We don't have time for that. We have to have intervention right up front now, and we have to start early. And I'm talking early when a child, age appropriate, is basically like 2 years old kind of thing. Because how can this get so out of hand? How can everybody think this is okay? And I'm still hearing it's bad, we have to stop it. Okay, Washington, okay, Albany, we know this already. Where are the plans? Where are the resources? So I'm very hopeful that President Trump, the administration, will pour in resources. And one more thing about that. President Trump, I attest to, he was the first president to give monies to organizations working in trafficking that never received government money before. And I say that because I learned, Scott, they go into Washington, and a subject like this, it's kind of on the bottom of the totem pole. They just check off boxes. Okay, This administration gave to these 12, we'll give to these 12.
Right.
First president, and people will challenge me on this, but I was there, so I know it to be the truth.
I think you're going to be successful, and I think it's going to be, because I've kind of been there. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I was stationed in Thailand. As a matter of fact...
Thank you for your service. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I wish it was for a better cause, to tell you the truth, because that Vietnam War was what it was, right?
That's a whole nother program.
It is. And I don't want to take much time for that, but just to give you a little background, I joined the military like a year after they stopped the draft. But the war, and they said the war had ended. So I thought, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life, and they can give me an education, so on. So I joined the Air Force, became a jet engine mechanic. Immediately, the war's over, right? As soon as I get out of tech school, they sent me to Thailand to work on planes bombing Cambodia. That's where I first learned that you can't trust necessarily the government or the media, right? And ever since then, it's been a learning experience and getting involved. And when I got out, I became very involved in veterans' rights and things like that. And we were working on the Agent Orange situation.
Oh, boy.
And when we started that, now I didn't get affected by it, but I know a hell of a lot of guys who did. And when we first started working on that, nobody even heard of it. And, that's where I learned. And we went and we lobbied in D.C. and all that. And one thing I learned was one thing you're talking about here. These congressmen, they don't do anything unless there's some big carrot being dangled or a reward or a threat. And they wouldn't listen for nothing. I mean, the VA snubbed us. They weren't going to give anybody anything regarding Agent Orange because you can't prove it and all that stuff. But then we kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and you get one politician on your side and another. Sooner or later, it became very popular, a very popular issue. And everybody started hearing about it. Next thing you know, they're all on board. There's money out the yin-yang for anybody who's affected by Agent Orange now. So if it could happen to us, for us, it can happen for what you're doing. And it's just a matter of it getting popular. And these guys, unfortunately, you're not really relying on their altruistic side of them. You're relying on what they think they're going to get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I ever tell myself is, as I digress here a minute, how do they afford these multiple homes, members of Congress, on those
Right.
salaries? They don't even have two homes, they have like three or four. I always keep that in mind. How are they affording all of this? But that's another story. But here's what I want to, and this is a really tough one, Scott. People have to realize with this trafficking, do you know that most of the time, now I'm separating from the border right now. In New York, we know it's 62%, so it's higher because we know it's 62%. It's familial trafficking. So it's a family member trafficking a family member, as opposed to we think it's a stranger, right? We think of that white van. We think of, they met somebody online. Think of this 62% in New York State. Traffics their daughter, traffics their wife, traffics their sister. That is a cultural thing we have to talk about. And also behind the scenes, it's been very quiet in the last year, I'd say. There is a tremendous push across the United States to legalize prostitution. Now, most people will say when they hear this, oh, that's great. My body, my choice, the woman wants
Yeah,
to
right.
do it. No, the woman wants to do it. That's fine. We are not talking about adults here. I just told you what the demand is, right? It's younger and younger. They're minors, okay? What nobody understands, and there's a law right now in New York floating around that we are challenging, is that when you legalize prostitution, the bill in New York right now is legalizing brothels, legalizing pimping, legalizing traffickers, legalizing sex buying. So you hear legalizing prostitution, the public will think, okay, that's great. They're not understanding. You are legalizing the criminal as well. And what does that mean? Supply and demand. If it's legal, we're going to have more children trafficked. There's more money to be made. The bottom line for all of this horror, it's always money, right? It's always money. That's just the bottom line. And, the last couple of years, they've been given free reign to just come in here. In addition to Americans doing all this, we've got all these illegals doing this. It's been a free-for-all. It's going to be a lot of cleanup. But we have to remember, because people will say to me, Scott, it's too much. I'm overwhelmed. I can't even think about it. If we stay in our lanes, here's the way I think about it. Because if I start thinking about it, well, I could go crazy, but I'm a warrior, so I don't go crazy. But if we help one person a day, or if we, for instance, I'm talking with you today. Prior to you, I did another interview with somebody. And if we keep doing one thing a day about this subject, right, then we've done our jobs. We have to just keep chipping away, and using the media platforms for good. Because remember, everybody wanted me to come on their shows when it was about Jeffrey Epstein because it was deemed somehow like sexy. There was a lot of money involved and a lot of well-known names. Now I'm going on a lot because I'll do anything to really spread the name of the Warriors and our work we do. For P. Diddy or Puff Daddy or whatever his name is now, Diddy. I call him Dirty Diddy, right? But so I'll do it. But they don't want to have you on. I know everybody in the media. I'm talking Fox. I'm talking CNN. They don't really want to have you on to talk about what I'm telling you. The demand is 0 to 2. The demand is, familial trafficking. How are we going to get around that cultural thing of, how about a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, and because I work with survivors, right? They think it's okay because their families have always done this exploitation. They don't even know it's trafficking, it's exploitation. How are we going to get into society and talk about that? Somehow, some way, we have to break those chains as well. And nobody wants to talk about that one. Diddy? Epstein? Yeah, okay, bring it on. But you know what? This border thing that we would allow, and don't get me started, Scott, on the NGOs that have made millions and millions working on the border, that have done nothing but, in my opinion, complicit with the Biden-Harris administration in the biggest human trafficking operation in the world. And those NGOs, they're answering to nobody. And they're getting away with it.
Right. And as far as like big media only wanting to talk about the hot issues, of course, they've got sponsors to please, and they're after a certain thing with their audience. They have to please their sponsors, their stockholders, and all that kind of stuff. These these podcast show people who do these podcasts, people like me can do whatever we want. And I want to get the truth out. I want people to learn about this kind of stuff. And that brings me to, I want to learn a little bit more on something you just touched upon, because I don't know enough about it to say so, and I doubt most of the people out there do. Now, you were talking about what's happening in the families. What is going on there in relation to trafficking or slavery or whatever you want to call it?
Well, we have a couple of different things happening. Number one, again, because this is ugly and dark, we have to admit that the internet now has opened this up tremendously, right? The internet, a phone, a child has a phone, a teen has a phone. That's like opening your front door, never locking it, and welcoming the world in, right? So the kids are exposed today, all people are, kids in particular, they can talk to anybody in the entire world, which is why we wanted something like Kids Online Safety Act, a couple of guardrails, to protect kids. I don't think it's asking too much with everything going on today. So the thing is, we find with most children, they're meeting somebody, a lot of American kids, they're meeting somebody online, right? Mm-hmm. We know this grooming process. I don't even like that word, where somebody gets familiar with you. Somebody starts understanding your problems. A kid may be saying, my mom wouldn't let me go somewhere. And within 24 hours, Scott, they've groomed them into meeting them perhaps online. We have 9 to 17-year-olds. We know that 25% have been approached online, sexual situations. Of that 25%, 40% will attempt or meet that person in real life. Now, those are tough statistics. And these are strangers. So, and then we have the cases of a teenage boy may think he's talking online to a girl, but then it really turns out to be a 50-year-old man named Biff or something,
right,
pretending to be the cute teen girl who gets them. Kids are sending nude images of themselves. I'm dating myself a little bit, like baseball cards, like exchanging baseball cards.
Right.
They think nothing of. They think nothing of it. But then they get sextorted. It's extortion. Okay, I've got your picture now. Now I'm sending it to mom and dad. Oh, I'm sending it throughout your school. Oh, I'm sending it. You're going to get in trouble now. You'll get arrested because you sent a nude over the internet. Complete threatening, manipulation. We have kids killing themselves. It's especially teenage boys with this extortion. Instead of going to mom and dad, or we have to remember family units today in America are made up of, we have a lot of grandparents raising kids now. We have aunts and uncles raising kids. The dynamic has changed a little bit. They'd rather kill themselves because they're too embarrassed to go to a parent or not. And that's ridiculous. We have to be open and honest. Like, this is going on. That's the first step. Most parents will scream at a child. Why did you send that nude? Why did you do that? And erase it. No, that's evidence. You have to keep that. You have to file a report. 911 is your first step. And then Cyber Tip Line in Washington, they'll take over the case for you. And if you're wrong about something, you're not held responsible. So we have to get over step one. This is an embarrassment because it is this is the real pandemic, all of this going on. As far as the other familial trafficking I was talking about, this is a tough one because that is, again, a cultural thing where they grow up thinking this is the way it goes. Dad has to pay the rent. I'm the teenage daughter. I owe it to my father. They think there's nothing wrong with it. It's a whole psychological manipulation.
So the father's like pimping them out? Is that what you're referring to?
We have fathers pimping out daughters. We have family members, brothers pimping out sisters. We have mothers. Do you know mothers? The New York Times, believe it or not, I think it was just last week, I was shocked, had an article about how many mothers are selling their children in America. I was shocked they even ran the article, but they're trying anything because the media is failing,
Right.
But they will sell their children. And here's the horrible thing. Now with the internet, most of the servers for all of this predation are in foreign countries, okay? Nigeria, mostly that's where the servers are. Now we've got this artificial intelligence. I think everybody should be talking about this a little bit more. It's not the cute chat GPT everybody's liking and all that. We have, I don't know how to say this because I know we're a family program here, Scott. In real time, we have mothers, and this was in the New York Times article, and we've known about this. In real time, men will be on the other end paying that mother and telling her how to abuse her child. Now, it's happening in real time, and they'll send her $50 or send her $100, and we have a rash, and it's growing, of this online exploitation happening. And you can't it's happening in real time. How do you get that criminal? So we have wonderful law enforcement. We don't have enough law enforcement for this. And I get the same, I don't want to say argument. I guess it's an argument. I'm like, how can this be allowed? We have so much technology. Why can't we get a handle on this? They say we don't have the resources. We have to have the resources for this. We have tremendous people working with Interpol and all these organizations. But Scott, I ask you, why can't we make a dent in this, a bigger dent in this? This AI kind of exploitation, this is going to become the norm now. This is going to be it. So we have like the OnlyFans, if you're familiar with that. We're going to have the exploitation right there. It's going to be an app. It's going to be something. I mean, they're doing it now on the dark web and all that. It's right there. So we have to talk about this. And we have to be very open and honest, again, age appropriate with the kids, because you know what? Their friends are showing them things on phones. They're hearing. Can you imagine the kids in the last week were hearing about drones flying all over? We're hearing about bird flu in California. Kids are scared. You might not think so. They hear, they pick up on adults, feelings and things. This is why we have to be the leaders. We have to sit them down. We have to talk to them. Again, depends on their age. This is going on, but you're safe with mom and dad or whatever. And that's what I'm finding parents aren't doing enough, family members, really talking with the kids. And when I say that, if you're going to buy a device for your child, because most likely you bought it, you pay for the internet, you've got a router in your home, you have a responsibility as the parent, as the adult, to have guardrails on those devices. You have to figure out whether you have friends only, right, on the devices. You can't have all these strangers that kids are getting involved with. And the other thing is, we cannot tell a parent, there's parental autonomy. Do not buy your 5-year-old a phone. But again, why does a 5-year-old need a phone?
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
But what we like to say is delay is the way. Really, why does a child before 8th grade need a phone? And if you do want to give your child a phone, because parents say, well, we want to be in contact with them. We have school shootings. We have this, we have that. You know what? We have phones now that look just like an iPhone, an Android, and all you can do is text or call on them. There's no internet capability. There's two wonderful companies, Gab, GABB.com, wonderful, and also Bark, B-A-R-K, like a dog, .us. They have all of these things so a kid doesn't feel left out if you're in the 7th or 8th grade and everybody has an iPhone. We don't want to get the bullying going because that's a whole nother program. But there's so many resources out there that people are not utilizing, and so much free stuff people could utilize, and they're not doing it. And that's, I have to tell you, Scott, that's what amazes me. With all of this, that people aren't taking advantage of all these resources to keep their kids, our precious kids, safe.
I agree, and you've just brought up a ton of topics here, and I want to address a few of them. But I want to go back to the parents pimping out the kids. What kind of socioeconomic level are these people at? What are we talking about here?
First of all, everything we talk about affects every level, okay? We have some rich people, what we would call rich, doing this to their own kids, okay? Mostly, though, it's vulnerable, lower economic, right? That's who's doing it. We especially broke forth during that COVID period where a lot of landlords would pressure when people didn't have rent money and things like that or food money. Look, they would pressure them to, okay, well, I'll take your son or daughter instead for a few hours. And people did it. And here in New York, we started hearing tremendous amount of stories like that of landlords pressuring. And especially, you have to also remember, a lot of single moms, right? Or even single dads who are working 2 or 3 jobs and the child's home alone, or it's an older sibling taking care of the younger siblings. That's a very vulnerable situation. And people are moving right in on these vulnerable situations because after all, you open up a can of worms here, Scott. But like, if young girls, if they're watching the Kardashians for like the last 20 years and seeing all of those homes and clothing, and they're hanging out with, I don't know, basketball players, and there's a poor girl, she's stuck with her 3 siblings watching them while mom's working, and she can go like on an OnlyFans, and some guy will pay her $20 to lift her top up. She's going to do that. She's not going to work in the local supermarket or something. It is an all-around predation going on. So absolutely anybody vulnerable. It's mostly lower, socioeconomic for this. But I want everybody to bear in mind, it affects everybody. Everybody. I mean, to hear stories of girls who live in what I would consider like mansions, and they're in high school, and their own boyfriend, it's called Romeo, the Romeo pimping. She has a boyfriend for a while, and she thinks everything's great. She's 15 years old. She's in high school. And all of a sudden he says, can you do me a favor? My friend likes you. Would you do this for me? If you love me, you'll do it. And he pimps her out. Once she does that, then the boyfriend becomes violent. You're going to do it with this person. You're going to do it with that person. And the girl will not tell the parents because she's embarrassed. She's afraid. She's scared. And she confuses this with love. She thinks this is love. And before I forget, we work with Nurses United Against Human Trafficking across the United States. We know 8 to 18 showing up in a couple of facts. In emergency rooms, they're showing up with strangulation marks. Girls as young as 9, 10, 11 years old, because their first sexual experience, and bear in mind, I'm saying 9, 10, and 11, very young. Boys are seeing so much porn readily available online. And the porn is not just like people having sex. It's violent. It's vicious, the categories now. They are seeing men strangle women. So boys think like this is okay. This is what you do. You strangle a woman. And they're doing it to these girls. So we know girls are showing up all over the country with strangulation marks. Now, I think this is something we need to talk about and educate boys. You don't, that's not the way you treat, and girls, this is not acceptable. So there's so many different issues here that we're not talking about. We have to talk about. And also in emergency rooms, 9 to 17 of children showing up, ages 9 to 17, 40% of them, I want you to hear this, 40% of them are 11 and under that have tried to commit suicide. So that's 9 to 17 suicide or suicide ideation showing up in emergency rooms. 40% of them are 11 and under. How does a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old know about suicide even? Because of the internet. The internet is feeding this to our kids. This is why the parents have to be on top of everything as much as you can.
Wow, there are so many things that need to be handled. And you were just asking a little bit ago, how are we going to handle all this? All I can say is, yeah, we've got a ton to handle, and we can't let ourselves get overwhelmed. And you know what? These guys have been successful. The bad guys, I'll just call them for now, like the administration and so on. Like you were saying, you think they do it just to create chaos, right? Yeah,
because I don't think they're smart enough to think like you and me. I really don't. My experience, and I'll leave it at that, is where I always think there's really a reason for something. They're not that smart. That's my take on everything. And I look, where was Kamala Harris to protect women and girls on the border, even, right?
Right, exactly. And when I say, I agree with you, though, that their major focus is on chaos. And I agree that they're not, like Biden and that gang, they're not smart enough.
They're not smart enough. We're giving them too much credit. They just don't care. They're lazy. They don't do anything. They're not smart enough.
But the thing is, chaos is good enough. That's bad enough, actually. And that, if you can just create chaos enough within a society, you can manipulate them. You can keep everybody running like a chicken with their head cut off. Look right now. People are overwhelmed. There's so many things we've got to handle. You just opened up like 20 of them, just within the corner of the world you're working in, right? and then we've got the economy, and we've got education, and you name it. It's like there are a million things that are going downhill.
Yeah.
And so they've done a good job creating chaos. I'll say that.
Well, remember, when people are overwhelmed, Scott, they close the door. So, like with the trafficking,
Yes, they shut down.
or the internet is too overwhelming. That's why we have to separate it out. You have a duty in your home to do what you can do to protect your children. Now, that being said, we have to remember a lot of these kids that get trafficked by pimps, traffickers, they don't have a parent. It's a single, parent household. They come from nothing, right? They have nothing. There might be no food in the house. They run away. We have a lot of runaways. Within 24 hours, they're trafficked. Because when a kid is hungry and a stranger acts nice to them and says, you know what, let me just get you a hamburger and I'll help you get home or something. It doesn't happen. They get thrown in the back of cars and usually driven to another state, and they're stuck in trafficking. Like so we have to also talk about all of these vulnerable kids. I don't hear anybody talking about them, because I hear story after story of when I work with people. How did this happen with you? When they tell me it's, no mom in the house, or a drug-addled mother or father, and they're left alone. They get involved. They think somebody loves them, the trafficker. They take off with them. They think they're going on a date, because this was a true story. And then they get beat up, thrown in the back of a car, driven to, Washington, and they're forced. They're forced into this lifestyle. And so we are not doing a good enough job of saying this is unacceptable. We pride ourselves. We say we're the strongest and the best country in the world. I have to say, and I'm an American, Scott, like through and through. I'm disgusted with how this has been handled. This is not acceptable. Enough is enough. And it has to be every school. I mean, after all, the schools want to put these books in that are very inappropriate for kids, but they don't want to have the conversation, with just indicators of what goes on. And also another thing, the kids are we're working with a lot of schools, and it's a school by school thing or a district by district, get the phones out of the classrooms. And the kids do so much better when they're not sitting there with their phone all day long as a distraction. Now, that being said, we put cubbies, in the classroom so they have access in case of an emergency to get to the phone, or we have, the main office, we check them. But people have to start thinking in those terms, right? Because none of this is going away. The phones, the internet, it's only going to get bigger, worse, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to give this up. You and me are talking to each other right now. It's wonderful. We can do all of this from afar. But we have to think about the kids who have lost so much time during COVID with education. How we've got teachers unions. It's so many issues here, who have been very predatory. And I talk to a lot of great teachers who've just been afraid for their jobs. So they have to, stick with these curriculums, and they don't want to. We have to. So many doctors I've spoken to. Why did you force this on kids during COVID? I had to. I was afraid for my job. That's a whole nother program. But I'm just saying, I really feel hopeful beginning in January that with President Trump, it's now become, we can talk about these things. We can start healing. But here's what I want to say. We have to think about 4 years from now. We can't lose the momentum and ever allow this again to come into the United States and grow, right? We have to continue working hard and understand what's going to be 4 years from now. Do you follow what I mean, Scott? Because we can't lose this ever again. That is why when I see people worming their way in there, I don't want people to be fooled by maybe they're backed up, they have a lot of money and things, their organizations behind them. I want President Trump and his administration to always remember what was done to them and to the American public in the last 4 years. And we really, really, really have to get in there with the schools. We really have to get in with the parents, though, right? And talk about it with families. The kids are so much happier. Believe it or not, they'll finally reveal to me once I do a focus group and they like me, and I gain their trust, like, yeah, we don't want phones in the classrooms. Like, we want to talk to our peers. We want to just eat in the cafeteria. We want to concentrate and try to learn. The teachers are happy because they're trying to teach. And so we have to kind of go back to basics. Like, we push at the Warriors a lot, an actual book. If it's 15 minutes a day, give your child a book, a hardcover book, not an iPad, not online. Let them open the cover. Let them read 15 minutes. Start with 15 minutes a day. Let them feel accomplished when they finish the book, and then just have a little discussion. And that goes for teens too. It sounds so simplistic, Scott, but like we have to get back to basics kind of thing, reintroducing these things you and I probably grew up with.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And I also think that, yeah, it's great. Trump's coming in with the team he has. And I 100% agree that we need to make sure this continues after his term's over. So the way I look at this next 4 years is this is a chance to make a big change and set a precedent for the future. And we've got to all become ever vigilant. We've all got to do something. We've got to get the idea through our heads that we've got to dispel ourselves with the idea that somebody's taking care of it.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Because, yeah, somebody's taking care of it, all right. There's people working day and night to destroy everything. That's who's taking care of it. And I know this wasn't the game we thought we were in for when we were born and we were little kids, right? But this is the way it is. And I think, to enjoy your life and live your life fully, you need to take responsibility. And that brings true joy. And we've got to get used to that idea. It's not just going on picnics and vacations we should have that, sure. But we need to all take responsibility and do something.
Yes.
So, and I thank you very much for doing what you're doing. I mean, you're not just doing a little something every day. You're doing a lot all the time. So, is there anything else you want to
talk about?
Mention before we? Because I know you've got a million things to get to.
I'm sure you do too, Scott. Well, I want everybody to go to lynswarriors.org, and we'll have all the information for you. But I want everybody to realize, again, it is time for everybody to stand up, really for all children, right? We have to think like that because some children have nobody to stand up for them. When we put out take actions, for instance, we do a lot of these, urging our legislators, to sign on to something. Believe it or not, there's power in numbers. They do keep track in Washington, right? If you get about 10 people addressing the same subject, they will address it. So when we put out at the Warriors a take action, and all that means is you sign your name and zip code to something, right? It means so much. And that takes what? A minute? Maybe, you'll read what it is. That's all you have to do. And if that's your one Warriors action for the day, you've done it. But that helps us tremendously. I want to leave you with, I want people to understand our children. They are so much smarter than people give them credit for. Even the little ones. Very savvy. Talk to your kids open and honestly. Assure them they'll be safe. And be very careful of how you react to different things. Because again, the worst thing you can do if your child did something wrong, for instance, they shared an image on their phone, is scream and yell at them. They'll never come to you again with anything. Just take a deep breath. We're going to take care of this. And understand there's 3 steps, 911, cybertipline.org. Do not erase any information because that is evidence. And there are people out there, resources, people to help you. So what I want to say is people are not alone. And just to leave you with, I'm very hopeful. The new administration, I'm looking forward to it. I do believe we'll get a lot of work done, but we cannot take our eye off the ball for 1 minute. We got to look over our shoulders, empower each other, and be kind to each other.
All at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Lynn. I really appreciate all you
Thank you,
do
Scott.
and for being here. And I'll be posting all of your information in the show notes.
Thank you, Scott. And happy holidays.
Yes, you too. And we will have happy ones despite everything.
It's been happy since November 6th. So everything's
You're right.
looking up,
You're absolutely
right.
It absolutely is, for sure. So you take care.
Thanks, Scott. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
We will. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And also, please check out Lynn's information in the show notes. Go to her website, see what her organization does, and feel free to contact them to get more information and maybe even offer your support. This is a much needed and effective organization which abides by its mission statement, which is ending human trafficking, slavery, and sexual exploitation by raising awareness through media and grassroots mobilization, advocacy, education, and policy. Let's make it a great year and handle this.